Okay, hello everybody. This is just going to be yet another spur of the moment kind of video. I guess a lot of what I do is kind of spur of the moment anyway. But there is some degree with the other things like the book reviews I do. I do try to do a uh, fair amount of research, kind of in preparation for kind of the plot points and everything like that. But this is just more or less just me kind of trying to figure out my bookshelf as it is, and it's very, as you can tell, the stuff that I have. Look at these. There's like a dulcimer I have that I don't play as much as I should, only because it is in open tuning. But it's very nice sounding. I really love it. It's very like Appalachian-y, bluegrassy sound. I do wish it was a little bit more kind of modular. I don't know if that's the right term. More like you're able to play it in different keys and stuff. But anyway, getting back to the books, I do have off like this is build off here. I have William Gaddis's The Recognitions. I read one Gaddis book that I believe I did a review on. It was Carpenter's Gothic, and which is taken from the architectural style. I think that's a good kind of style. So yeah, that was I really kind of like that kind of gritty realism of Raymond Carver meeting with kind of that. But I don't know. I've heard this is more postmodern, I guess. But I haven't. I'm going into it totally ignorant. That's if I haven't started yet, obviously. But and other books that I had up here on the top of my shelf for some time. I try to kind of consolidate. This is like organized chaos, I guess is a term. I try to consolidate like a lot of different big books, like just like tomes that were like in the Infinite Jest kind of, like that thick kind of thing. So I believe the brunt of that is Michel de Montaigne, because I remember reading part or listening to an audible book of that, and I only got to a certain chapter, and like at some point it like I don't know if it downloaded error like it was wrong, but I was like, you know what, instead of like trying to pick up where I left off, I'm just gonna start from the beginning because I really like what Montaigne's like. He was a moralist, or he was a aphorist kind of. He talked in a little rusty on his whole life thing, but he talked a lot about death, and he talked about like how his one friend, he was like had a best friend that passed away, and he talks a lot of like very wise essays that he writes about death and how to cope with someone, like how it's like losing I forget what word he said, but it was like losing almost like a part of you, like an integral like physical part of you, like that you were so used to having at your side. And yeah, so these different things, I guess. Yeah, I did do parabolic. Yeah, that I did a review, and I am trying to go. I do have her other book. For some reason, I thought it was a saga or a trilogy. Um, I guess because I'm used to thinking in threes. Maybe I've just had that kind of embedded in my mind for some reason. But yeah, it is just the two books. That Octavia Butler for the parable of those, dual books. I have not read The Parable of the Talents yet, but these are all books basically that I've yet to read. FYI. So yeah, excuse my messy room as well. It's really hard to vacuum in here because there's so many different. I don't know if I've ever actually shown like a full scope of it, but yeah, there's basically anyway, let's see. Room tour, very shameful room tour as I show my like only the different kind of yeah, like I said, I was trying not to get too out of hand. I try to vacuum at least once, every few days, a week or something, but it's hard. It's hard with all this stuff here. Sort of like, you know, move these big kind of bulking, hulking things taking up so much space. But anyway, so we have The Dispossessed. Yes, I've heard many good things about Ursula K. Le Guin, and I have read one book by her. I want to say 3 years ago. It was called The Left Hand of Darkness. And yeah, I like the speculative fiction. I like that kind of Philip K. Dick kind of like these are things that could happen. With what would happen if there was a planet that were in the future, in the somewhat foreseeable future, kind of like Ex Machina, a little bit, where, but more kind of far-seeing, where on a planet, if a species like an organism was able to produce asexually, how would that be compatible with human life? Like, what would that look like, and that's pretty much how the Left Hand of Darkness turns out. It's like kind of a thought experiment, and I don't know, I like that kind of stuff. I like speculative things, like, so yeah, and sections poetry, just because I'm trying to get better, I guess, as a songwriter. I think, like, one thing is, like, reading more poetry. Um, I'm not so good at listening to poetry, because I think poetry is something for me, it's best if it's visually in front of me, whereas things like plays, I think, I'm used to, like, if it's something like Shakespeare, or, like, or even, like, stuff like Chaucer, even though, or Faust, stuff like that, staged dramas, like, I feel like those are best listened to. But I guess it depends too, because, there's, um, definitely philosophical works are something that I feel like should be, just kind of totally read out, in book form. But other times, like, there's times when, so I had poetry, and then, oh yeah, Finnegan's Wake is, like, the last kind of, obviously I haven't nearly exhausted enough Joyce. I think it was Dubliners, Ulysses, blanking on the names, Portrait of an Artist of a Young Man, and some others, but I have not gotten to Finnegan's Wake yet, because I'm just waiting for the, it's not, like, so bad, 600 pages-ish, but, and I've done some decent kind of 600 pages, like, stuff like the corrections and stuff like that, but, I feel like that's not so hard if you get into the story and you're, like, invested in it. It's not like a chore to read, 40 to 50 pages a day, although I wish I was at that right now, but I am slowly going through, Miyako Kawakami's Breasts and Eggs. The only other one I read by her was Heaven, by, yeah, and she is also, lauded by, Haruki Murakami. So, yeah, I'm sorry, definitely kind of like the up and, not the up and coming, but has, at least when she was, like, released back in, like, the mid to early 2000s, I think, maybe 09, I think, was her first book. I think that was, like, hailed as, like, an up and coming literary, phenomenon. So yeah, we have Nin, that's silent P, Nin, by Vladimir Nabokov, which I am slugging through slightly, only because I'm trying to take my time with Nabokov, because I feel bad about kind of going through, like, Invitation to a Beheading, and kind of going a little bit too quickly in the pace, I think. And I think I think Updike on the back, it literally says, like, there's only one way to read Nabokov, and that's ecstatically. So I think, like, ecstatically, slowly, if that's possible. But yeah, so anyway, so I did do these. Yeah, Last Temptation of Christ, I have not read yet, obviously. It's, Nikos Kazantzakis. Okay, it's not that bad of a name. And that, he wrote, obviously was, like, the, adapted by, Scorsese in, 88, I believe, with Willem Dafoe. Obviously, it's like a really, really well-known kind of movie, kind of a staple of culture. And, oh yeah, he also wrote, I think, Kazantzakis. I should get that name, because my dad's name is Greek. On his mother's side, it was like a Trifondelis, or it was a very, very Greek name, like Trifondelidis, in Trifondelidis, I think, something to that effect. But yeah, he also wrote, Zorba the Greek, yeah, and yeah, so My Struggle, book one. I have heard of this guy. I was a little bit wary, because I thought that My Struggle was limited to just the kind of that Mein Kampf kind of. I thought that connection was trying to be, like, a little bit provocative, in the sense of, like, not in a kind of mindless sense, but more in a, maybe a Michel Houellebecq kind of sense of, like, really trying to kind of prod people a little bit, but yeah, so Karl Ove Knausgaard, I think he's a Danish writer, and he wrote like this whole thing. It's actually kind of one of the longest books ever written. I think it's up there definitely. And yeah, he this is just the first part. I think there's like 6 parts or something. It's kind of like with Proust too. Like Proust has a good amount of other things by him here. Like I have Time Regained, or I'm sorry, yeah, Time Regained up there too. Wait, wrong way. Yeah. So there's stuff like that. All of Proust stuff, and I think I'm almost halfway, or just about past the halfway mark in Search of Lost Time, or I think it's Le Temps de Recherche, I think. So yeah, and then I also have to slowly work my way through Onier de Balzac, or the Emile Zola's The Master, the whole kind of 12, 13 book, I think, volume. It's similar to the kind of comedy, like the Human Comedy, but different centuries, obviously, kind of like Balzac a century later. But yeah, so I have on this kind of stuff I should get rid of, kind of, because it's stuff that I read a while ago, like Pale Fire, Fight Club. A good amount. I've actually read all these Camus, but there's one that I am also waiting for, which is, sorry, okay, there's one by Camus. It's called Caligula. Yeah, that. It's yeah, it's a play, but there's also other plays in there. Obviously, it's cool in those collections. Like when I read No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre, it was in a collection of different plays, and one of them was like, it had like The Respectable Prostitute, it had like this one about a political assassin, and yeah, I should probably review that one day. So Tolstoy War and Peace Volume 2 is another big tome that I've got to work through. It's just the print edition of this is just is an older style, so it's like that's still like a good 900, 1,000, 1,400. Dang, interested in that. But yeah, so some of these are done. Like I already reviewed this. It's not like when I review it that I'm no, so I'm gonna throw it away. But a decent amount of these, not all of them, but like only ones that are kind of just taking up space that I don't. Like I got this interesting edition of C.P. Cavevi. There's a Greek poet, and it's like it's it's been like at least a couple of years since I've read that, so I'm not saying I should get it. I obviously it just goes in the other library in the house, so it's not like I'm trying to. And I also have 5 other siblings that I can always kind of try to get them to kind of at least take a good kind of portion of what I have kind of hanging all up here, kind of chaotically. Oops. But yeah, so I have Calvino. I've still got to get Invisible Cities. I'm just not sure if I've got, I got pretty much like pretty new influx of books. Like I got the recognitions off Amazon, like, and it came like in this kind of big thing, and I didn't even know it was a book at first, because usually books are just like in like paper packages. So but yeah, I think that, and but yeah, so Cormac McCarthy, sorry, Suttree, yeah, I've yet to read. I did read The Orchard Keeper, and I want to say All the Pretty Horses. I try to, I'll probably just do a separate video where I talk about all the books I read in the year, so to kind of review a summary of everything. But yeah, so down here we have more psychological stuff, but then even then it's like, it's a toss-up. It's like I still have, Dawn Towards the Goldfinch there, although I probably should start with A Secret History first. I have it on my wish list as well, just because it's a little bit shorter, and since I have all these other kind of big, exhaustive kind of books, I think I should kind of pace myself a little bit, but yeah, I definitely will get to that someday. So the collected poems of William Butler Yeats, definitely. I did read or listen to an audible version of some like selected poems. It was really, yeah, I liked it. Like I like his like cadence and his tone of just kind of like it's almost like Irish transcendentalism at for with his there's like a kind of melding of both Irish folklore, paganism, and like the spirituality, and also kind of the everyday kind of the plight of like the um so yeah, the Iliad and the Odyssey. I haven't surprisingly, I don't know, I just haven't got around to it. I do want to take my time with older works because like the way older works are, they're like written out is very very um not sure how to describe it. It's like very um well, you have to contend with finding the right translations, and I think for the most part, like what I found with translations and various things to do with the humanities and anything like this kind of stuff, is that usually like the best kind of people, like the kind of the most high quality kind of people are gonna find their way to the top anyway. So it's not like the only exception I'd say is like with Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or even Gogol. Like those books will be translated by every time by Laura. I think it's Laura Svierhouse and Purahowski. I think Peter Purahowski and Laura. I think I can't. It's Holahowski, I think. But one of them is a bona fide Russian, and the other one is an American woman. I'm not saying that's, or maybe it's the other way around, but I could be wrong. But I'm not even sure if I still have that version that I initially read, but I don't think it necessarily, because I think the first thing I ever read was a Constance Garnett version of The Idiot rather than their version. So, and I felt that to be more kind of authentic, I think, to allowing it Dostoevsky's sentimental kind of style of going, deeply into kind of, these quirks and stuff, the eccentricities. Um, Allowing that to kind of flourish and thrive as it is, rather than trying to edit and kind of bring everything into and then an awkwardness comes, like a kind of stumbling kind of tete-a-tete, or kind of battle, guys, where you're like trying to like figure out like what the intention of the author is, like, and then it's fine. I don't think but I found with like maybe ancient scholars and stuff, I think like this version is probably almost probably like um ever since like at least the Enlightenment era, as far back or even further back to like maybe Renaissance times, of like having the kind of first kind of true honest translations of ancient works, Hellenistic things, the antiquity and all that. So, and then we have Williams. I've still got to get this other one, Butcher's Crossing. It's another one that I heard good things about. Dharma Bums. Oh, I have not read this yet. I've read 2 or 3 Kerouac. I think 2 Kerouac. Ginsberg, I feel bad because I've read First Thought, Best Thought, but it's more of a series of lectures. And aside from How, which is like a half-hour long poem, very intense beat poem, kind of like a staple, kind of emblematic, beat poet. Aside from that, I haven't read anything else by him. So, yeah. So, Mishima, Confessions of a Mask, I've read. So some of these I read, but I think because things are just kind of where I generally know they, where I expect them to be. So, but yeah. So today I wrote Nothing, Daniel Combs. I've got to get more of it. I try to read at least 2 of every author that I get, but that's no promise, though. Some of these are old because I ended up, Peter Karmazin, by Hermann Hesse, is like a pretty old kind of copy, very old, probably since the 70s or something. But yeah, and then we go down here. Some of these I already listened to, like The Republic. I listened to a pretty good kind of amalgamation of all the parts of that. Same thing with like the Gulag Archipelago, I think is down here. I don't know if you can even see that, but yeah. I think all 3 or 4, 3 parts, volumes. Yeah. Then we have Muraki. We have 1Q84, which I also wanted to save. Maybe not for this year, but even just early next year. Because this year I'm trying to get through. I'm not sure if I'm gonna try to go even more than 150 books, but if I do, I'd have to kind of be at least 10 per month, at least. 12 to 15 per month or something. I mean, if you did 20 per month, that would be what? 20 times 20 would be 220 or something over the scope of the year, and that's a pretty big thing to keep. But then there are months where I go crazy, where I'm like literally listening to audiobooks on 2x speed. Some of them, not some, like if it's something like I'm not like where I kind of get the idea of like what it's going through, or I'm like not super into the book anymore, but so we have some more Murakami, and then I Am a Strange Loop. Again, that's another kind of psychological work. Most of Jung stuff, Carl Jung stuff should be down there. But yeah, I have like the Red Book. I read that. I read the Red Book. Aeon, the Archetypes. Yeah, pretty much a good amount of this stuff. I mean, obviously there's still more to. I haven't yet exhausted, but yeah. I went through like a kind of Clary C-list spectrum phase. It's not ended quite yet. I mean, but that was like last year-ish, so I'm trying to accumulate more of her work. And then Brief History of Everything by Ken Wilber, just because I want to kind of get more of an idea, because I only read one short introductory kind of thing by him. And then, obviously, Bakhtin, I read that. Totality and Infinity by Emmanuel Levinas, French philosopher. More of a kind of a mystical variety. Kind of reminds me of Simone Weil, whose work I have somewhere here. Simone Weil, I think it's Simone Weil. Baudelaire, oh yeah, I've got to read this too, so I'm going to put that there. Baudelaire, Simulacra and Simulation. And then I also have Jonas Chico's book, and he's probably the one that kind of initially got me into like Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, who they wrote obviously Oedipus Rex, and I know for a fact I have that somewhere here because I saw it, and I tried to keep it down here where I would remember it. And then I also have Dirty, just trying to get all that last 80 years to everything from the maybe 30s to 70s or 80s, and then and then there's some Max Stirner I think down there. Anyway, so I think that's pretty much everything. Went over the stuff up here. Some of the stuff. Oh yeah, I think I did. That is Blake again. So yeah, I think I have. Sometimes I accidentally bought 2 copies of something unknowingly, like the I Ching, or the Book of Changes. But I think hopefully I can maybe give that away one of these days. So yeah. These don't have spine things on them, but yeah. Anyway, that is my eclectic collection of books, and yeah, that's all I have for now. And side note, I do have a bunch of movies there. Some of them kind of Criterion Collection, like Andrei Rublev. Some of these I haven't seen that I got just to encourage seeing them, just because like actually opening up the physical DVD or the Blu-ray or whatever. Well, I'm not sure if I have a Blu-ray here. But yeah, stuff like Fantastic Planet, which I'm ashamed to admit, have only recently watched in full. And it is only an hour, 10 minutes or something. But yeah, it's really, really, really surreal, really experimental, and like it's getting at so many different kind of thematic elements of like social commentary without being too blatant, and the animation style kind of lends itself to um, surrealist fantastical, which hence the name, which is like originally the French word for fantastique, I think, is like sauvage, I think, sauvage. So it's like more of wild than actual. So it's more of like a primal kind of wild rather than fantastic, and maybe the way that we think of fantastic as like something that's like way out there or something. But that probably might fit too. Yeah, sort of like I recently watched Goodbye Lenin. It's probably one of my favorite kind of movies of all time, but maybe more particularly European movies if I'm in the mood for subtitles. The subtitles, but I felt like it wasn't work at all to watch. Just a really like lighthearted, um, you know, this kid trying to like convince his mother that he was a very very like East German nationalist kind of Leninist kind of socialist, I believe, and she has a concussion, and then one in that moment when she's like in a kind of temporary coma, I believe there's like the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, and basically everybody has to uh, in order to kind of assuage her fears like of the Soviet Union, she has to kind of everybody, and mainly his son, like puts on like a fake performance to make it seem like the world is still under the of I mean, obviously Stalin's been dead for 30 years at this point, but like to at least to make it seem like all the political kind of intrigue is still there. So anyway, but yeah, so other stuff I have, like, almost forgot I had the Vietnam War here, and just stuff that I probably already talked about. Some of these rarely. I actually saw this in the theater. Motherless Brooklyn was a really good one. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, probably one of my favorites too. True Detective season 1, just because, it's too good. And we have the disaster of season 2 with Ray Velcora and all that. But anyway, so yeah, I think that's all I have for today. Sorry for the tangents there. But I'm gonna wrap this up right about now. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.